It's so nice to share this precious time with each of you. Before we begin, let us open with prayer. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen. Amen. So our topic today is becoming a caregiver. This is a topic I can tell you from experience, from caring for my mother, is a topic that's rarely discussed and even more rare that we're prepared. But before we begin with our first speaker, let me read from the Quran. Surah 17, ayat 23 through 24, the ninth journey. Yusuf Ali translation. Thy Lord hath decreed that you worship none but him, and that you be kind to parents, whether one or both of them attain old age in thy life. Say not to them a word of contempt, nor repel them, but address them in terms of honor. And out of kindness, lower to them the wing of humility and say, my Lord, bestow on them thy mercy, even as they cherished me in childhood. So we know now what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in our translation that I've read, that he has commanded us to care for our parents and speak to them in the most honorable way. And yet we find ourselves included in this is not only the care for our parents, but many of us have found ourselves in the circumstances that we have had to care for a loved one, a spouse, or even our children who may have encountered an accident and found themselves with an impediment of some sort. So I thought that, again, from my own experience of caring for my mother until she passed, until she transitioned, may she be forgiven her sins and be in paradise. I thought that this was a topic that really needed to be addressed. And I want to begin with someone who I have known all of my life, who is our first speaker, Sharonda Ali Khan. She is a pioneer in Newark. She is no stranger to this community. She's the daughter of two highly respected leaders, national leaders in our community, Dr. Abdul Salam and Sister Khadija Salam, both who we ask Allah to accept them and forgive them their sins.
Thank you.
I can hear someone speaking. So I want to begin by saying Assalamu alaikum, Sharonda, and thank you for accepting to be on Study Al-Islam. I want to begin our conversation, Sharonda, by letting people know that that you've had three experiences, and you're unique, I think, in this sense of responsibility. I don't know any other person that has had the responsibility of caring for three people. Sharonda cared for her grandmother. She cared for her ex-husband, whom is the father of her 5 children, and they remained friends until the day he transitioned, and she cared for her mother. She cared for them in 3 different time periods of her life, and I think that's important to know, to note that. So let's begin this discussion, Sharonda, with my first question to you. Um, what qualities, what human qualities did you have to draw on in yourself that was similar in the care for all 3 of these beloved people in your life?
Thank you, Fitrah. First of all, let me thank you for inviting me to this forum and having a chance to enlighten, if you will, or bring up to speed, if you will, the caring for our aging parents or loved ones, as we're going to call them today.
Yes.
Because as you so eloquently put it, they could be anybody in your family. They could be a friend, a spouse, a child, or parents. But we're going to just look at the diversity of that. And also, we just want to be able to say that in caring for someone, the first thing that we need to do is assess what is it that we can do for this person? What is their needs? How do we identify their needs? And through that, we have to look at preparation. We've got to prepare ourselves and look inside of ourselves and see exactly what it is that we're capable of giving and what we can provide for them as they take this journey. Everyone is not a nurse, but the love that you establish in life gives you a support system where you can look at a person, know who they were before this decline, and make good decisions on how you're going to navigate them or assist them through this whole new period in time for them. And I think that once you do that, you're on your journey. You become aware. And what do we mean by preparation? We mean by observing our loved ones every day and seeing signs of decline and not putting it on them, but noting all of these little things that we seem to see and begin to develop a plan for them. You see, sometimes people, we can see signs in people and then we begin to let them know we're seeing the signs. And sometimes they become a little, I don't want to say annoyed, but it looks like they're losing power. We don't want them to go there because that can cause conflict within themselves. We want to keep their spirit up and let them know that we're there for them the best that we can and that we have so much to share with them and do so many things for them, which will enable them to see and feel and know the comfort that they have as a support system. I just would like to just take a moment and say, just for your own particular, this is not a one-stop-fits-all topic. And people are different. People are very, very different. And you have to assess the difference in these people as a person to where they are today, to where you knew they were yesterday. And some of the physical things that you can assist them with is their ability to handle chores. How are they differing in the handling of their day-to-day activities? What weaknesses are they experiencing? What mobility problems are they having? such as shaking. I notice my mom shakes a lot. Wonder what that means. I see she's having a hard time getting up or down the stairs. What does that mean? How can I help her there? What are some of the things that you need in order to help them? Do they need a walking stick now? Do they need a wheelchair? Do they need a walker? We have to keep ourselves alert and see. We don't have to talk to them about it, but we really, really, really need to focus our attention on these changes that are taking place every day. If we just take a second, we can even look at the mental side. The mental side could be a little tiny forgetness. Are we forgetting to take the medicine that the doctor provided for us? Are we repeating things over and over? Do we need assistance in going to the store because we don't know? Do we need to incorporate these things with them in terms of not letting them know what they're not doing, but helping them along in what they can do? And we want to take a look at all the areas that that we really need to look at and see how we can be effective. Their finances, are they paying their bills on time? Are they forgetting their bills? Their medications, their instructions from doctors. If they're going to a doctor's appointment and then they're coming home and you're saying, so what did the doctor say, mom, dad, or whomever? I don't know. I don't remember, but I know they just did this and they did that, but I have no idea. So establishing rapport and relationships with the people that they are coming in contact with, we get to see the level of care that these particular people or our loved ones are experiencing at the time.
Let me ask you this, Sharonda, let me ask you this question, because what you are expressing or explaining and describing requires, it sounds like it requires a great deal of involvement. And so my question to you is, what did you realize about yourself? Because you took care of 3 different people with 3 different circumstances. What did you find about you that the common qualities that you needed in order to successfully do what you have so far described? What were the qualities in you so that others can look to say to themselves that these are the qualities that I need to have in order to deal with providing care for someone? Because I don't think those qualities are different. So please.
Yeah. When you look within yourself, some people identify quickly and they'll say, oh no, I can't do that. That's way too much for me.
Mm-hmm.
Or oh no, I'm not ready for that. Innately, you are prepared for that already. You're already prepared for it. It's just picking up the ball, taking it, and moving with it. You can't just look at the ball and say, I can't lift that ball up. I have to feel it. I have to see it. I have to know. It's just, I think it's the reverse, Fitrah, of a newborn. When that newborn comes, you don't have any game plan or anything. Mm-hmm. You just see it, and innately you just say, this is what has to be done. This child has to be fed, cared for, loved, cleaned. All of these things just come. The same thing applies on the other end. This person is losing everything that they once, as Allah said, known much. You've known much, and now you know less, or you begin to decline from what you already knew. So inside of you is that built-in wit, or that built-in heartfelt, and you can identify with it because you've experienced it in your own life. Your mom was always there for you. Your dad was there for you. Loved ones, whoever they were there for you. They were a part of your life cycle. So now it's on the reverse side, and you may not have all of the time or the luxury of time, but you have the need to fulfill what it is that they need at this moment.
So accepting the responsibility with it's not a matter of asking yourself whether you're prepared or not. Of course, preparation always helps, but what you're expressing is that you need to accept the responsibility, regardless to the circumstances of whether it seems that you can do this or not. The first goal is accepting the responsibility.
Accepting the responsibility. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes it's a small responsibility. Sometimes it could just be they need a little of assistance, a little bit, but you have to realize it, and you don't have to bring it up to them. You don't have to say, why do you keep repeating to me? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Take note. Take note of what's taking place and try to find your solution and how you can be most helpful. When I dealt with my grandmother, she was sharp as a tack. Her mind was so good and strong, and she knew how to think things through and do things for herself, but her body was declining. But her mind was not declining. I want to share a short story, but I want to move along.
Okay.
I remember we all were sitting at the dining room table and discussing what should we do with her home. And we were discussing this, and she walked down the stairs and she said, "What's going on here?" And we said, "Oh, we're trying to figure out what are we going to do with your home, Grandma B." And Grandma B looked around at everyone and said, "You're discussing my home and I'm not at the table?" So that just gives you a good picture of exactly who this woman was. I'm not at the table, but you're discussing me. That's how sharp she was, but her body needed help.
So on that note, Sharonda, because you've made a distinction about Grandma Bunny, and you let us know that it wasn't her mind, but it was her body. Can you do that same with Leonard? May he be in the highest place in paradise, and your former husband, your ex-husband, and can you do the same with Mom? Tell us something about your care for Brother Leonard that was different, that was needed and distinct, and then tell us something about Mom, because what it gives us is examples, please.
Okay. With Abdullah, Abdullah's body had totally given out, and he was suffering with disease. He had his faculties; they were a little scattered, but he was the main thing was that he was in pain and suffering from a disease, and we had to have that compassion for him to make him as comfortable as he could be battling that disease. And we had to also be able to figure out what it was that he needed in order to get through it all. So that was a little different from Grandma Bunny, and is a little different from my mom. With my mom was a total dependent. She had a mild stroke, which cost her some of her memory. But as time went on, she had another mild stroke, which cost her her speech. So she was not able to tell me what she wanted, what she needed, or how she felt, along with her body deteriorating, along with her mind deteriorating. So it was I had to communicate with my mom on feeling. I had to feel her and see what she was trying to say. So it made it a little more complex than just sitting, just caring or cleaning a wound or making making you comfortable. I had to figure out if she was comfortable. If I went in her room at night, I would have to see if she's sweating, the room is too warm. She doesn't say, could you turn the heat down because it's too warm in here? If she was bundled up and close to herself, I said, maybe it's a little chilly in here and she needs an extra blanket. I had to be conscious of her all along with everything. Did she have too much? Did she have enough? What were her needs for me at that particular moment? And that's where all the compassion came in. And I really made myself accessible for her at that time.
You know, let me just say this. First of all, I want to apologize for calling Abdul Leonard, but I've been knowing him, you know, as a young
And he was
girl.
Leonard. He was Leonard.
Yes, as growing up. But I think I think we also need to make this point, and because I'm so close to you, I know this history, I can ask these pertinent questions. So with Grandma Bunny, you actually lived with Grandma Bunny in her house and cared for her. I want to make a point. With Abdul, you actually moved him into your house and cared for him. And with Ma, you actually moved her into your house and cared for her. So let me ask you this. Because you've made clear that you have to be attentive, you have to have intuition, you have to be sensitized and be connected to them, you have to be personalized, you can't, you know, it's an array of sentiments and emotions and wit, as you called it, wit about you. So how much how long did you take care of Mom? Because I know, and how long did you take care of her? And this is, I need to point out that these are 3 different time periods in your life. So let's go from a young Sharonda with Grandma Bunny to a middle-aged Sharonda with Brother Abdul, to a mature and seasoned Sharonda, who was a great-grandmother, maybe even a great-great-grandmother, in caring for her mom. What was the kind of time that you had to devote to caring for them?
I really never looked at the time. I really just looked at the need. Okay. The need was there. With my mom, my mom was such a devoted person to life. She was so devoted to life. And once the decline began to come, she wasn't even ready for the decline. She didn't even know what the decline was about. And she just began to decline because it was mental. It was a mental thing. And she didn't know that, you know, I'm losing my memory here. I had to see that for her and be able to hold on to it. I was really blessed because I was able to have all 3 of them to be with me in my home, and make the home a part of their home, and structure myself to be able to handle all of the intricacies of day-to-day care. But I will say this, you have to have a support system in that. You may have, I call it your dream team. And your dream team, you're not a lone wolf in this. You may not have a lot of siblings, your mom may not have a lot of siblings. You have to tailor it to who you have. You may only have one person, a dear friend, that can come in and assist you from time to time. I was a little more fortunate. I had 2 brothers that were there all the time to help, friends that were there to help, and myself, given the time that I had, I was finished with work, with my work life, so I was able to devote a lot of time to my mom for her care, which was good because it was also a learning experience, and it helped me to see exactly what I needed to do and not impose on her, because all she just it was all about what I gave her that kept her where she was comfortable and in her own element, and not so much as she understood it, but I guess in her own way she understood what was happening to her. But as an older person, there was so much compassion oozing from me because I knew how much she needed, and I knew how much she needed to express, but she wasn't able to. And I was able to take that time to listen to her and look at her body movements and see her facial movements. Was she happy? Was she unhappy? Did she need this? Did she need that? And take that in as part of her daily care. The love that you had was the motivation to keep moving and making things better for her.
Sharonda, we have about 4 minutes, but I do want to reiterate to everyone that what makes you most qualified, what in my estimation was the fact that you cared for 3 different people at a time in their life that they needed it the most. And I knew that they all had required 3 different types of care, even though there were similarities. So in these last 3 minutes, first of all, I want everyone to know that Sharonda has put her email in the chat. You should feel free to email her any questions that you may have. In the last 3 minutes, Sharonda, I want to know, I know my mother's social worker helped me tremendously to deal with my mother's care, because my mother too was sharp mentally, but she was totally paralyzed. And so I remember her saying to me, which often brought tears to my eyes, was all she wanted to do was get up and wash her own face. And something as simple as that we take for granted. But in these last couple of minutes, Sharonda, what would you like to share with everyone before we hear from a social worker who will give us the more professional side, the more formalities to this?
The most important thing that I found, and that I see every day, is that we don't want to make our loved ones feel that they are losing. We don't want them to have that. You're still strong, you're struggling, but this arm, this crutch is here for you. I'm here for you, whether it's for 20 minutes a day, once a week. I'm here for you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to guide you. I'm here to make it easy for you. I'm here to make it pleasant for you. We need to have them, not look at them as a burden or, oh my God, this is so hard, I can't do it. Why don't you stop talking to me? Why don't you stop criticizing me? Why can't this happen or that happen? No. Clear your mind, take a deep breath, and say, this is my thank you, my donation, my charity to you as a human being. I want to give you the best exit that I can possibly give you. the
mean,
most comfortable exit. And it doesn't have to be an exit. We're not even at the hospice end of it. We're at the part where you just need a little assistance in getting through the day, to day by day, breath by breath, it's all coming to an end. From that big spectrum, we want to be there for that person in totality, in love, in respect,
I
in
mean,
rejuvenation, to keep them, not to have them say, oh God, I'll be glad when I'm out of this. No, I'm so happy to have this loved one that's here for me, that's here to guide me, that's here to help me, that's here to inspire me to go on until my time has expired.
I mean, I can attest to. I know the sacrifices you have made, which is why I wanted to share your experiences on Study Al-Islam. This is a topic that we need to have more conversations about. I want to encourage those on the line to contact Sharonda to speak about this subject, because she is most qualified. I'm going to close in a quick story about my mom, and then we're going to go into, and then we're going to invite Malika on. My mom went into hospice 5 times. And anybody who knows about hospice is kind of somebody take you up to the hill and then kick you off. And then she come. So 5 times she went into hospice. Now I'm an only child. So there were people around me that were saying things to me like just go in there and take your mom's hand and hold it and say, Mom, I'm going to be okay. Because they kept saying, your mother won't leave because she's too concerned with you. And so they said, go in there and hold her hand and say, Mom, I'm gonna be okay. Don't worry about me. The next place you're going is a wonderful place. Up until my mother transitioned, she had humor, and she's laying there. Now, remember, she's completely paralyzed. Her eyes are closed. She's not talking because she's finding it different. And I'm holding her hand and I'm saying to her, you're not alone. I love you. Don't worry about me. She opens her eyes and she says, if where I'm going is so wonderful, why don't you come and go with me? And I was like, this is my mother. And so I want to just say, please, Sharonda, don't leave us. People are writing and saying they don't see your email. If you could type your email in the chat, we're going to introduce Malika and get her started so that we can stay within our time. I can't tell you how invaluable your contribution is, how much you have expressed the kinds of qualities we need towards our parent. But I think the most important a piece of information you gave us today is don't question it, just do it. Just accept the responsibility and do it. And you have shown that in each and every one that you cared for, even your ex-husband who you brought to your home and cared for him at a time of need. So don't go anywhere, and let's welcome Malika Moore. Malika, welcome to Study Al-Islam.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, and you just heard from Sharonda Ali Khan, who gave an amazing story, and I hope that you will incorporate her stories.
Of course.
Good. Malika, just briefly tell the audience, tell the listeners, give them a little background on you, because I want to spend time on your PowerPoint.
Okay, wonderful. So my name is Malika Moore. I am the founder of a company called Aging and Amazing. Those two words don't typically go together. So I wanted to change that stigma and highlight that we can be aging and amazing. I'm a clinical social worker. I'm also an aging life care professional, which is where people hire me privately to help them organize their care, like either they don't know what to do or their parents want to move to a community or they want to stay in their home. I just put the plan in together because like Sister Sharonda mentioned, there's so many pieces going and she was so blessed to have the time to get all of that together. But a lot of people have so many roles, they have good intentions, but need a little bit more support. The other part of my business is that I have an online community that's for anyone, pro-aging, family caregivers, and professionals who support older adults. And that can be any profession that helps older adults. And so I'll tell you all a little bit. I have a surprise for each of you. It is National Family Caregiver Month, but I'll get to that at the end of my presentation. I'm in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, and my community is international. So we have people in there from Jamaica, Canada, Oregon, California, New Jersey, Alabama, everywhere. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's move on to your PowerPoint, which I know is powerful.
Okay. All righty. Here we are. Here we are. So I just titled the presentation Caregiver 101. I want to highlight, like Sister Sharonda, I wrote down some pointers. I said she could have gave my presentation. Assessment, love, support system, observation. There's no one size fit all. She wrote being vigilant and having preparation and having a dream team. Those are all great pointers that she highlighted, and I'll kind of overview in this presentation. I already told you about the company, so we will move on from that. We'll talk about the types of caregivers, role reversal, ADLs and IADLs, loss of self, caregiver reactions, strategies, and caregiving 101. There are different types of caregivers. I will say this, not everybody chooses to be a caregiver. Some just step up to the plate because of maybe obligation or, and I've seen many different types of caregivers. In my working in the community in different settings, I've seen the person at the front desk become the caregiver for one of the residents in the building, helping them get everything they need. Or like, and you know, someone from a community center who took on someone who didn't have any children or didn't have any living family because they're in their 90s, like they're in their late 90s and they've outlived everyone. So you have different types of caregivers. There are formal caregivers, and you may have a mixture of these. For formal caregivers, you're paying someone generally for the services.
Malika, I don't mean to interrupt you, but your PowerPoint isn't moving. We don't see what.
Oh, you don't see it? Oh.
We only see the front page.
Okay, let me go back to share.
Okay.
Let me stop share. Okay, do you see the different types of caregivers?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'm not sure how that happened, but we're gonna move along with it. Okay. So there are different types of caregivers. We have formal caregivers that you will pay, or sometimes they're government services that if you reach out to your Department of Aging, that they're paying the person and they're coming out to support you with your loved one. We have informal caregivers. That's family, friends, neighbors, that type of thing. And then I wanted to add on this one. We have our sandwich caregivers. So I know that you all have probably heard this term, but it's a care provider for 2 generations. So we have a lot of people who are not only caregiving for a spouse, mom and dad, they may be raising children at the same time. So those are definitely 2 types of caregiving, but they take a lot of time if you think about it. And so I wanted to add our sandwich caregivers on there. Are you seeing the slides move with me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. What is role reversal? You can type in the chat. I can't really manage the chat, but I know that everyone else can see the chat. What do you think role reversal is? Or do you have any experience with this? So it's pretty self-explanatory, but say for instance, I'll use myself as an example. I'm one of three. I'm a middle child. And so say I start caring for my mom or my grandmother. That's different because they're used to providing the care for me, making sure I'm okay and I'm doing well. All of a sudden, I'm in this new role, and depending on the level of care that your loved one needs, they may need help with incontinence. So changing a brief or reminding them to take medication or following up on their appointments. And as you can imagine, all of us have a story. So they were once doing something, contributing to society, probably very involved in their religious organization. And now they're here where their child is telling them, hey, we need to do X, Y, and Z. And that's what the role reversal is. So we talk about activities. Sister Sharonda mentioned a lot of these things. You'll hear these terms when you go to the doctor's office or when you're working with different professionals, and they'll say ADLs and IADLs. And sometimes we forget that everyone doesn't know what that means. So activities of daily living, that includes walking, bathing, dressing, feeding, grooming, toileting, and transferring. So think of it more of that hands-on direct care. You may have a loved one in rehab and they say, okay, they need supervision on ADLs or they need total assistance on ADLs. And then you have your IADLs, instrumental activities of daily living. So communication, you may be managing their finances, housework, meal prep, medication management, shopping, transportation, those type of things that need what we call executive functioning. So in order to get those done, you have to use a part of your brain that's going to help you plan and organize. And depending on what's going on with your loved one, they may or may not be able to manage these tasks. So now you know, if someone says ADLs, that's more direct on the body care, and then IDLs, it's more like high-level planning and organization. All righty. So 1 in 5 caregivers reported difficulty assisting with ADLs. They reported difficulty increased when caregiver felt there was no choice. And then diagnosis also made the task of ADLs more difficult. So you have people who they're dealing with the ADLs and the IADLs, but it makes it more difficult depending on what the diagnosis is. So if you have someone who's dealing with Alzheimer's type of dementia, then it may be more difficult. You may have to do more, or you may be reminding them more, or figuring out, like Sister Sharonda said, like, what can they really do? Like, what can they really not do? And I've ran a lot of caregiver support groups. And what the caregivers always appreciate is that I let them be honest. Like, there's some hard days. It's not all, you can be a great person and love your parent and love your loved one, and it's just tiring, you know? And sometimes, depending on what your loved one's diagnosis is, they may not be the person you knew all your life. They may have behavioral changes or say things to you that aren't so nice. So that makes dealing with these things a little difficult. And I have some caregivers who respect and love their parents, but they did not want to be doing the direct care or managing all these other things, and just needing a safe place to say that, yet pick up the torch and do what they need to do, or get some of those, what we call informal supports, to help them if they can. I also want to say, tied in with that other slide, is when you're caregiving, and I think every caregiver can attest to this, sometimes family stuff comes up from way, way back. And it seems to come up when you're in that vulnerable, you're both in a vulnerable state as a caregiver and the care recipient. And sometimes I've noticed that makes caregiving a little difficult. So although you know that happened 20, 30 years ago, for some reason, sometimes those issues will come back up and if you don't address them, they may interfere with providing care for the person. Okay, so caregiver responses. We have nostalgia, a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past. So some caregivers feel this way, like caregiving for their parent, they have these nostalgic feelings. My mom cared for me. Now I'm here and I'm able to do these things. Some people have resentment, and that's bitter indignation at having been treated unfairly. It may have been something that happened that maybe wasn't that big, but it was big to them, and it's interfering with the caregiver. Some overcompensate. So say they weren't there or something happened in the past, and so they try to be super caregiver and do just everything and go way above and beyond to where they're destroying themselves. And it's because it's a reaction to some inferiority, guilt, or inadequacy, leading to exaggerated attempt to overcome the feeling. So basically, that could be amongst siblings. Maybe you have one sibling that really wasn't involved and you see they're trying to do everything and they can't do it, but it may be because they're trying to make up for something that happened along the way. And then you have caregivers who are content and satisfied, like they love being able to be there and guide and direct their loved one. So, and you may fluctuate between all of these caregiver responses. You can type in the chat if are there any other responses that I missed.
I want to stop you there for a second, because I think this is very important. And these 4 descriptions that you have just shared are very real. I can tell you that I often, sitting with my mom, wished for the way we were.
Yes.
Wanting her to do things for me, respond to me in ways that made me feel so comfortable and secure, and she wasn't able to do any of those things. And then and so I think you can hear from Sharonda, she was in the content box. Sharonda, I don't want to speak for you, but I just want to say, do you agree? I am speaking for Sharonda. You can hear from what she said. She was in the content, absolutely satisfied with the care of having that responsibility. And we know that the drama in our families, there's a lot of resentment. We know that.
Yes.
And between siblings, who's going to take care of mom? I got a full-time job. I can't do this. I do this. I do that. I've been taking care of her. You're not doing that. And overcompensating. So I want to just really point out that these dynamics are very real, very real.
Absolutely. And I want to say this, sometimes I work with families and they're embarrassed. Like if an argument ensues while I'm there, and I say this, and being a social worker taught me this, every family has their stuff. I don't care how much money they have, how educated they are, where they live, what their religious background, every family has its stuff. And so it's really like trying to get to that core and help the goal generally, you have some outlying situations where people are trying to exploit, but generally the goal is to help that person live, not only have good quality of care, but good quality of life until they transition. So yeah, these are giving caregivers that space to know that if you don't feel perky and skipping about caregiving, you're not alone.
Yes, that's right.
All right, I took the different leadership styles. So there are tons of different leadership styles, but maybe this will help you. I know I have a whole different presentation on this, so I'll go through very quickly. But the different leadership styles, I turned them into caregiving styles. And you may say, oh, that's me, or that's my brother, that's my sister. So we have autocratic. Those people don't really want to hear from anybody. They are making all the decisions. We don't care what you think. I'm taking control and I'm doing this. Then we have our laissez-faire, who's kind of like, oh, whatever, whatever we decide to do is fine. You have your democratic, like, let's take a vote. Like, what does everybody want to do? Do we think mom should age in place or do this. Let's take a vote. Then we have our bureaucratic, someone that's by the book. So they read this caregiving book and you're supposed to go through step 1 and step 2 and step 3, and they really want to make sure things are by the book. You have a servant leader who puts others before themselves in the caregiving situation. So they're never thinking really about their needs. They're thinking about, how can I help mom? How can I help everybody else deal with this? Then you have the situational leader or caregiver. That person, they may be any one of these leadership styles when the time calls for it. Because I don't want to make the autocratic leader seem like a bad person. There are sometimes when you have to make a decision, we don't have hours to figure this out. And then let's say the bureaucratic caregiver, that person, when you're filling out documents, forms, you want to be by the book. We can't just say, oh, let's just fill out this box and leave this other 5 boxes clear. So there's value in all these different types of caregivers, and you may vary. So just think about, like, what's your caregiving style? I'm going to move on to the next slide. All right. A fundamental form of that suffering is the loss of self in chronically ill persons who observe their former self images crumbling away without the simultaneously development of equally valued new ones. So basically, I want to say this for both the caregiver and the care recipient. They're losing some part of their self. Your loved one may change their behavior because driving is a big one. Like, I love driving. So imagine how someone's feeling who you're saying you can't drive anymore. And it's like, well, what can I do now? Like, how do I get around? How do I interact with the world? So sometimes that's what you see in your care recipient. But it's also important that while we're focused on the quality of care, that we're also thinking about, what can I do to bring joy back in this person's life? If they're not able to get to the mosque, how can we make this like adapted for this person's health needs and health desires, where they can still get that joy if that's something that brought joy to their lives? All righty. So the impact of loss of self is leading to restrictive lives, experiencing social isolation, being discredited, and sometimes they feel like they're burdening others. Even the caregiver feels that way. That's why they can't talk to everyone, because it's like, oh, here comes Malika talking about the caregiving situation, where we're talking about the concert we're going to Saturday. We don't have time. They don't want to be the downer in the group. So it does bring on social isolation and being discredited. All of us are aging, every single one of us. So imagine having a full career or full volunteering, and now you're in the bed or you can't go places. So sometimes and that's why I named my company Aging and Amazing. I noticed that after 60, society has a tendency to say you disappear. When you still have value, irrespective of what your diagnosis is or socioeconomic status, religious background, you still have value. And that's the things that can happen in loss of self. People lose people. We lose things in our life as we're constantly growing and changing. That's what life is. Change, and a lot of that is loss. It's what you gain from that loss that makes life. So in all these situations, like, and it's so hard to see when you're in it, like, what is the lesson in this? Like, what is this trying to show me? And what I've noticed in my own life is that things come back later. Things that I thought were difficult and I never was going to get through, it happened for a reason. And sometimes, like Sister Sharonda, who she probably didn't know when she was caring for those 3 people, that she would be here today talking to you and encouraging you and giving you tips and insight. So just keeping that in mind on your rough days. So having empathy, sympathy, and a strategy. I love that Sister Sharonda said building that dream team. Isolation is the enemy. It's the enemy in this thing. You have to get some kind of support. And you may get it from the oddest person. Sometimes the people you're looking at, oh, they're going to be there, they may not be there. So you're going to have to find different avenues to get support. And don't look at it as a personal failure if you need that support. This is something different. This is something that you may need a lot of professionals to come in. You may need respite. So having empathy, sympathy and strategy. Oops. Okay, tips. These are common tips like distinguish the disease and the person. Sometimes your loved one changes so drastically. I have loved ones say, oh, she never used to curse. Like now all of a sudden that's all she does. Where is this coming from? Or they'll have a loved one who's maybe taking down their clothing. Like what's going on? My mom was never like this. My dad was never like this. So distinguishing between the disease and the person. So learning as much as you can with the time you have about the disease that your loved one is experiencing. Adapt communication. I've had caregivers who say their loved one had a diagnosis of dementia. They want to run through every choice and selection and option. And I have to remind them, I'm glad that you're trying to keep your loved one informed, but this is overwhelming for them. Like they don't have the executive functioning. Remember, we talked about that earlier in the presentation, to plan and organize all those thoughts. Whereas like Sister Sharonda mentioned with her mom, she could be involved. Her body may not have been there, but she can talk about what's going on with her house. So adapting your communication based on your loved one. So know or have a recollection of that person. If you can do that, that's so wonderful, because we don't have good times with our family or friends all the time. But if you can hone in and zone in on those moments where you had a really good time and you were having fun, that's going to help you when you're looking at them and thinking, oh, it's a tiring day, or they used to do so much. All of that is still in them. That's still them as a person. So remembering that, and change yourself, not the person. This is not just a caregiver tip. This is a lifelong tip. Sometimes we spend so much energy trying to change others when we finally realize the only person I can change is me. Like I can't control what other people are doing, but I can control my reaction. Or if I take a bit of space, or I limit my calls with this person, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought I would add that. All right, key questions. Sister Sharonda already mentioned some of these. Like think about what's happening. Where does the behavior occur? When does the behavior usually occur? Who is affected by this behavior? And is it really even a problem? Sometimes things aren't really an issue. It may be annoying, but it may not be a big issue in the big scheme of things, So those are things you want to observe, or like I said, if you can't do it, get somebody on your team who can help you out. All right, so you're going to be constantly, if you're not doing it, someone on your dream team, like Sister Sharonda said, is going to be thinking about the who, when, where, how, why, what. They're going to help you monitor these changes. A lot of times the caregivers end up passing away before the care recipient, and that's because they need to care for themselves. They don't realize how much weight is on them doing this job. Yes, it's a good deed, but it's a full-time job. You don't take a break from this. Find peace with the missing pieces. Sometimes there's just going to be things that you just can't, you can't change, so you have to leave it to like the higher power. You have to leave it to someone else. And some pieces are just going to be missing, so finding peace with those missing pieces.
I want to give an example here. In my situation. My mom was physically, she was unable to move. She was completely paralyzed, but because she was legally she had mental capacity to make her own decisions. Mm-hmm. I could not move her out of her home, and she didn't want to give up being in her home. And you spoke about that, them feeling like they're losing things. Sharonda spoke about that. And she didn't want to give up being in her home. So I had to end up, because all these situations are different, and everyone that's listening need to clearly understand that there is, like Sharonda said, there's no one fit for everything. So I had a home that I wanted to move her into, and she didn't want to give up her home, and I was unable to force her or move her or reason with her. And so what happened was I had to end up getting her 24-hour nursing, but she would call me at the drop of a hat and said, Fitrah, I need to see you right now. I would drop everything that I was doing and go to her home. And I would get there thinking that there was a problem. And she would say, I just needed to see you. I could not get angry with her. And like Sharonda said, I just accepted that this was going to be the new normal for me and my mother. And so because she was a heart patient and they took her whenever she felt sick, the nurse would take her immediately to the emergency room. And of course, they would call me. And I always knew that I was going to be in the emergency room overnight. There was never a time, I don't care what is going on, that I needed to be prepared to stay in the emergency room all night with her while she slept from painkillers. I sat there with my eyes wide open. And I'm only saying that to say everybody's circumstances and situation is different.
Right, right. I agree with that. Was a great example. So any of you feeling like, oh my goodness, I can't do that, that may not be your story. So there's no manual. Like many people are going to write on this. It's different when it's you and your family. So I love that you said that. So caregiving 101, you have to remember that you're human. You are human. And be strategic. Caregivers are very strategic. Use your resources and be strong, and when you can't be strong, you need to find some people around you who can be that for you. They may be professionals or they may be friends and family. That's it. So I did want to tell you all that I do have an online community, and it's a cost to it, but for National Family Caregiver Month, anybody who is pro-aging, a family caregiver, or a professional supporting older adults, I will add you for free forever. All I need is your name and email. This community is where you can post, you can connect with caregivers from all over. So if you would like to be in the community, just send me your information before the end of the month. And that's my gift to you. Thank you for having me. And you can take a picture of the screen. I know some of you are on the phone, so I guess it'll be in the newsletter, how to contact me maybe.
Well, Malika, if you can take this down just for
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I want to get Sharonda back on the screen as well. Don't go anywhere, Malika. We're getting ready to close out. I want to just say, first of all, this recording will be in next Saturday's newsletter, and it'll be in there for a week for everyone to hear it again and again and again. But I also want to encourage everyone on here. I mean, we've talked about the caregiving of others, but I want to talk about, and I want both of your comments, that the fact that we may be the ones that need the care. And one of the things I learned from caring for my mother is learn to be cooperative with those who have to care for you. To my age group, start downsizing. We've got whatever we have becomes the responsibility and the burden of those who are going to care for us. We have to learn to have not just, if we're capable, don't get me wrong, if we're capable, try to remember to be as cooperative as possible with those that will be caring for you. In my situation, I'm learning to do more for myself in preparation if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows me to live and I have to be cared for. I'm learning how to become a better person to be cared for those who have to care for me. I want both of you to comment on that. Sharonda, why don't you go first? Take yourself off mute.
Yep,
I hear you. You're off mute.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
It seems so long for me. It seems so long. I'm trying to just put it all in the perspective of why don't you go first?
Okay, Malika, you go first.
I certainly will. There's so many pieces to this. And I will say, like, a lot of times when people call me, it's not to plan. They're already in crisis. They're already in crisis trying to figure out what's going on. If you can plan, you know, everybody's in a different situation. You need to get wills in place, advance directives, power of attorneys, all of these things in place to help you so your loved one can have a voice now. And these are hard conversations and emotional conversations, but we need to have them because you want if your family's grieving, give them time to grieve, not sit in probate court or whatever they need to do. And one thing I really want to stress is I'm an Asian life care professional, and it's not many people of color who do what I do. It's maybe 4 of us in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And so I'm trying to change that. So I really encourage you, like be interested in social work and any nursing, any of these professions, but gerontology, because by 2050, people age 65 is going to double, and I'll be in that number by that time. So we need to prepare the younger generations to not only honor the older adults, but take a lead, like get in this profession, help people out so it's more people that represent who we are and what we believe and what we think. So that's something that I'm really big about. But at the end of the day, aging, caregiving, it's universal. It's going to connect all of us, and we're not going to escape it. Either you're going to be the caregiver or the care recipient, or it's going to reverse. So just being as prepared as possible and knowing that, you're going to experience different emotions. Just if you didn't take anything away from this presentation, do not try to do it alone. It could save your life.
Sharonda, I want to give you an opportunity before we close out in prayer. I want to give you an opportunity to share any thoughts that you'd like to share.
I'm just so happy to be able to share. There's so much that I've learned in this process, and so at so many different stages. And the most important thing that I would like for people to take away from this is just be concerned enough to see the change. If you could just make sure that you note little changes in your loved one, that you don't even have to mention to them, that you just take note of it and come up with a solution on how to better it or make it easier. This is the first step that I think that we need to be conscious of, because they need to feel this is okay. This is okay. Getting old is okay. Not being able to do is okay. It's fine. Pay attention to them. Whenever you see them, whenever you visit their home, if they're living away from you, look around, see how they are doing now.
That's right.
Versus how they've done in the past. Notice that little bit of help that they might need. Be conscious of your parents. Be conscious of your spouse, where they were 5 years ago, where they are today. Don't let them fight you. Let them embrace you to get through a difficult period. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Do not be afraid to ask for help. Summons it, pray for it, run down the street and shout it out to the neighbors. Can you give me a little help? I need a little help here just to get through the day. Believe me, it's worth it. And it will also rejuvenate you. I love my brother Abdul because he always gave me a rejuvenation. Why don't you go to a hotel for the night? Why don't you do this? And I'll take care of it. I'll take over. Those moments are so precious to you as a caregiver, that someone is looking out for you on the sideline, making sure that you can keep going so they don't have to completely step in. And those are some of the things I just wanted to share and have you give some thought to in this process, because it is ultimately important.
So
and thanks for having me. And thanks for meeting you. God bless. God bless.
So as everyone can hear, this is a topic that we're not going to address in an hour, because I can assure you that everybody's situation, there are similarities and there's going to be vast differences. And one of the other aspects, and I will close this with this story and then prayer, that we did not address, and that is we teach our children how to care for the elderly. There is a story I read that a husband and wife and children, when they came to dinner every day, the father-in-law, who was old, would eat. And as he picked up his spoon, he would shake, and all of his food would fall off of his spoon and onto the floor. One day, he came to dinner, and there was a table that had been removed from the family table to the side, where they sat him separate from the family. And the father came home and saw his children taking a table separate to the side. And the father said to the children, "Why are you putting that table to the side?" And they said, "Because when you get old, that's where we're going to put you." So be careful of the example you set for your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren, because you're teaching them how to care for you. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you life and you see yourself in a situation that you must be cared for. So I want to encourage everyone to please contact Malika and Sharonda and get some real advice, because you're going to need it, and get some real advice on how to care for those whom you love. We're going to close in prayer, and I'm going, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, with Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Oh Allah, I cannot manage this life myself without you. Please make my life what you want it to be, what you prefer it to be. Do not allow me to act on my own. Help me act only in obedience to you, Allah. We hear and we obey. Forgive us. We are asking for your forgiveness. Ameen.
Ameen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Sharonda. Malika, thank you.
Thank you. You all are wonderful. Thank you so much.
The community welcomes you, and we will be contacting both of you more, and we're going to continue this conversation because it's an ongoing conversation that needs to be had.
Wonderful.
May Allah guide you and protect you. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum.